Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, July 21st, 2016. The show's over. I have no more time. I gotta leave. Time to go. Okay, basketball camp started. We're late again. We're ready to roll, though. I don't know what else to tell you. NATO is over. How many are, like 70 years worth of post-war alliances? That's done. We found that out last night. Meredith McIver, streaking like a meteor across the sky briefly into existence, then back out of existence, then back into existence again. Let's see, Laura Ingraham, caught in the old, dang it, I looked like I gave the Nazi salute on camera again, pose, again. Not just with, Laura herself, but, pretty much everybody at the conventions, the Republican convention. Happens every year, that they have these Republican conventions, but just that much more poignant now. And what else is new? I don't know. That's why we'll have Greg Dworkin reminding us of what's new. It's the role he plays, and thankfully he does. And he should be here today, gone tomorrow. Someone should write that down, like Melania Trump. Take note. That sounds like a good turn of phrase. Here today, gone tomorrow. Try it out. See if you can get away with it. Ted Cruz, I guess the headline grabber last night, Fat Dracula. That's the headline I grabbed. Roger Stone, who's a scumbag, an idiot, and a liar. Well, maybe he might not be an idiot, but he's a weirdo and a scumbag and a liar and a Republican operative, all rolled into one, as well as a floor wax and dessert topping. Came up with that one. Credit where credit's due. Fat Dracula is funny. It's not a fat joke, it's a vampire joke, and so it's permissible here in progressive land. I don't know. We have to wring our hands about these things from time to time. Let's launch into the day's news. Oh, a nice compliment from Maureen. Maureen 2. Now I'm reminded from Pokemon, Mew and Mewtwo. Maureen is a laboratory-created psychic legendary Pokemon. Worth a lot. If you see her on the street, capture her. Saying the Kagro in the Morning Trump impersonations that I slip in from time to time are hilarious and impressive. I sometimes think like they cross the border occasionally from Donald Trump into Diamond Joe Quimby, but he's a difficult one, and they're completely different accents. So it's weird how that happens, but I don't know. They're both, I guess, cheating now political scumbags, and so I blur the lines from time to time. All right, where will we spend our time today? I don't know where I do know where Greg will take us. I also know that I think I'm going to pass in the last 8 days, thank you very much, of the free upgrade to Windows 10. Has anybody got anything good to say about Windows 10? I got all kinds of warning flags about Windows 8. That hasn't been a total disaster, but it's not helpful, and I don't understand it, and I wish 7 was still around on my desktop. I can't imagine 10 is any better, though. The idea is to keep improving. I don't know whether it's working. What are we on? 3 days now worth of Melania Trump plagiarism stories. I guess they kind of hoped Ted Cruz would distract from that. So I'll allow it for the beginning of the show, just to stay topical. He didn't endorse. And I guess liberals are divided as between, well, is that a principled stance for which we should give some grudging respect to Fat Dracula Ted Cruz, possible son of JFK's assassin, and mass serial killer, murderer guy, the Zodiac? Let's bring that back. Or do we say, well, it's another self-serving move? And the answer is, of course, it's another self-serving move, but much debate among the punditry over whether it will, in fact, serve. On the one hand, they say, well, he knows Trump is going down to certain defeat and he will have distanced himself from him and remain the true conservative and an alternative for 2020. On the other hand, there's the people will remember school of thought, and I'm not sure where I stand. But before we hand things over to Greg, just want to tip of the hat to Bill in Portland, Maine, who starts us off with a morning tweet today. I would not wish to neglect to read it over. Daily Kos Radio is live. You can tell because Greg's here. Ted Cruz's RNC speech gives Kagro X, me, David Waldman, the confidence to also officially not endorse Trump. In fact, that section of the speech plagiarized from me 100%. How about you, Greg?
Oh, yeah, I don't endorse him either.
All right, we're together on that. Unity at last.
So my headline would be, I guess, Ted Cruz fails to get sufficient second at Republican National Convention.
Yes, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it.
I mean, they're doing it under House rules, right?
Yes. Now, he's in the Senate, but the thing is, wherever Republicans gather, Ted Cruz is hated. That's good news.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it's clear. And if you saw the smug smarmy speech he gave, you would know why. Yet, it really was a principled speech. And so the whole question on the table there is which principles are we talking about? I mean, It's good for Ted Cruz. It's not good for Ted Cruz now. He's going to get hammered. Everybody knows that, although he got a rousing reception at the Texas delegation this morning when he showed up for breakfast, according to the reporters. But he got booed, and the Republican Party's going to turn on him, and Ted Cruz has this huge gamble. And the gamble is that Trump is going to lose, and probably lose big. And by being the only principled conservative who stood up to Donald Trump, Cruz hopes, not now, but in 2020, to get some benefit from it. And there is no question, this is something that Erica Grider's convinced me of. Trump thinks about what's good for the next 10 minutes, and Cruz thinks about what's good for the next 10 years. And there's no question that he thinks in advance. This is really a checkers chess thing.
I really, I mean, it was kind of funny because I remember, of course, during the primary season, where his whole strategy was hug Trump as closely as possible, don't do anything to alienate his supporters. But
which at the time was good.
Yeah. The situation has changed now. Yes. The door's closed on him, so okay, you do it. Yeah, I definitely see that as a big difference between the two of them. Both terrible, and I don't want to arrive at the goals of either one.
No, both are horrible people, and you have to start out with that perception.
Yes,
but
I'm willing.
Given that, and by the way, that's not always true. There are some really nice, good people who do some horrible things when it comes to politics.
Yes, sure.
And there are horrible people who actually do some pretty good things when it comes to politics.
Yeah,
and then there's the Republicans, and you have horrible people doing horrible things with politics, and that's where Donald Trump is right now.
Yeah, that's the quadrant we don't like.
Yeah, that's the quadrant we don't like. But you can't like Ted Cruz. That's not the point.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm not worried. Nobody likes him.
Not even Dracula.
Yeah, I mean, there was a whole thing about Ted Cruz does, historical speech, or Ted Cruz makes history. And of course, our friend Darth tweeted, does it rhyme with Ziller Kodiak by any chance? I mean, you just cannot like Ted Cruz. It's impossible. Impossible.
Right.
But what he did
Bad Dracula.
was set a marker for 2020. And the weird thing isn't so much that Cruz did this. I mean, everybody could see this coming. You can't say that, Cruz's father killed JFK and insult his wife and do all this stuff and not see this coming. That's not really the point.
Oh.
The point is that Trump let him. The point is that even the networks got the speech several hours in advance, so the idea that Cruz changed what he was going to say is nonsense. Everybody knew he wasn't going to endorse.
Yeah.
Why did Trump let him on stage? And there's plenty of pictures of the Trump people, the Trump family sitting in the audience, not happy while Cruz was speaking. So the idea that this is some great grand master plan, magical powers kind of thing, as Greg Sargent refers to it, where it was all part of the game to make sure that the convention was exciting, is just bizarre to me in terms of that interpretation. Now, short term, it's going to help Trump and it's not going to help Cruz. It's going to hurt Cruz. But long term, we'll have to see. And the fact of the matter is that if you turn to the, for example, the betting markets, Democratic prospects are up this morning and have been over the last couple of days. So it's up to 72 Democratic chance of winning, Republican 28. And the Iowa electronic market is even more volatile. I skipped you over that graph so that you could take a look at it.
Okay.
And on day one with the Melania nonsense, there was a huge spike for the Democrats, which is now evened out again. But right now, the Iowa electronic markets are running what looks like about the 72-73% chance of the Democrats winning. It spiked up to almost 90, more than 90. So it's hard to look at this and say, oh, well, the Republican convention is really going well for the Republicans. It's actually been a relative disaster. But I do buy the argument, David Plouffe made this, that it's all noise, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is Trump's speech tonight.
Okay.
If he gives a decent speech and comes out of it with a decent speech, he'll come out with an okay convention that really didn't do a tremendous amount of harm. And if he doesn't have a good speech, it'll be a disaster.
Okay.
I don't see how he could make it a huge win at this point because the convention has been such a drag around him with the Cruz thing and all that.
At best, it's a comeback.
But he could neutralize it.
Sure. I'm looking at some of these spikes. I want to look up what happened on May, say 14th, 15th, something about, well, good research for later. I like that every once in a while there's a nice spike. Not always accompanied by a downward spike in the red line, I notice, but occasionally.
Yeah, well, the two are almost independent. That's one of the things that's kind of interesting about this. You know, Trump supporters are Trump supporters. It's something of a ceiling. And then Clinton goes down if she gets bad news like Comey email stuff, and then comes back up as that kind of fades. As the neutral people say, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm uncomfortable. As Nate Cohn was saying the other day, we were talking about this. People aren't totally ready to vote for Hillary yet if you're not decided, but there's a whole lot of people that have decided that they don't want to vote for Trump. That's why I think, it's not a foregone conclusion, but I think Cruz is a very smart guy, and he's probably right. Trump is going to lose, and he's probably going to lose bigger than what it looks like right now.
Very bigly, probably.
The LA Times tracking poll, remember, that's the one that weights heavily in favor of things like if you're more likely to vote. So therefore, older white voters get preference because of the ones that turn out. Older black voters should as well if they're regular voters. If you swear up and down on a stack of Ted Cruz Bibles that with Mike Pence signatures that you are absolutely positively going to vote, then your opinion in that poll counts a little bit more than not. And it was running a 1-point Trump lead with all of those caveats, and now it's tied.
Okay.
And that's a day-by-day poll. The Reuters poll has tightened, but they don't publish every day. They track every day, but they publish every 3 or 4 days, so it's hard to figure out what's going on. So the only way that you can try to get a sense during the convention of what's going on is the LA Times tracking poll, which so far, if anything, has trended 1 point in favor of Clinton, and the betting markets, which have trended in favor of Clinton. So that's the only data we have. But when you look at that data, it's really hard to make the case that this is an overwhelming win for the Trump camp. And I was just stunned this morning to hear the Morning Joe crew, including Chuck Todd, try to make the case that it's all good for Trump because it's controversy and therefore people watch and therefore it's all great. It doesn't matter how much of a disaster it is. The point, they go with the any news is good news.
Yes, right.
Stuff. And it's just, I don't believe it. I think that's wrong. But it's amazing to try to hear them make that case. Chuck Scarborough's Joe Scarborough's in the tank for Trump, so I totally understand where he's coming from. Everything that Trump does is genius political theater, and therefore you just have to get out of the way and let yourself be dominated by him. Yes. I get that. That's where Joe Scarborough's coming from.
Unbearable.
But it's the other people around him. It's the Chuck Todds and the Nicole Wallaces that when they start to say that, you scratch your head and say, "What are they talking about?"
That I don't know.
It's the idea was that Cruz being such a jerk, being such a smarmy, I'm in it for myself person, to the point where Chris Christie took him to task for giving a speech at a convention talking only about himself.
Of
And
course,
that
that's
actually
what
did
he's-
happen. That's
what
how
he's
bad it
most-
was.
That's what Christie is most famous for.
Yeah. So that was kind of funny watching that.
But I guess he endorsed Romney.
Yeah, but having had all of that happen, they try to make the case that this makes Trump more sympathetic and make people like him. Nobody likes Trump. Trump has the highest unfavorables of anybody in history. Can't make that case. So it's just fascinating to hear somebody try to make lemonade out of these lemons. That's been the Republican National Convention. And yet, in the end, Plop is right. If you skip all the chatter and all the talking heads, Trump's speech tonight is one of those times. It doesn't always, but this is one of those times where his speech actually does matter.
Okay. We'll see what he does with it.
And what's the other brilliant take from the NBC crew? Next week's convention is going to be so boring. Who cares?
Yes. America hates competence.
Right. At the same time, you do have, in fact, what's going on is extraordinary piece where Trump suggests that the U.S. might not intervene if Russia attacks NATO allies.
Right. Because he likes Putin.
Asking what's the big deal with Turkey. It's not our business. And America's so bad, how are we going to be lecturing them about how to act? These are extraordinary things for a presidential candidate to say.
Are they?
Yes.
Oh. Right.
First of all, running down
we're America.
the United States like that.
Oh. Yeah, okay.
Number one. And number two, claiming that NATO doesn't matter and you're not going to respond in case of attacks, giving Putin the green light to take the Balkans. That's extraordinary.
Well, maybe
and
he has
so
a
the only thing that's
non-aggression
going to happen
pact
from
with
that is you're going to see even more Republican national security people endorse Clinton.
Probably. And Balkan people.
If they can vote.
Where's Slovenia?
What's that?
Exactly. Where is
What?
Slovenia? Exactly.
It used to be part of Yugoslavia in the old days.
All right, so that's sort of a kind of place where I wonder what she thinks about she's here now. What do I care? Slovenia can go to hell, I suppose. Melania might
I don't think she's talking to the press these days.
Not directly.
No,
what is Molly?
she may show
what is
up at Donald's speech, but I don't think she's
MacIver
going to be talking to people. She's not happy with how things went the last few days.
No? All right, well, what does MacGyver think?
So, from the NBC News piece on this, asked about Russia's threatening activities that have unnerved the small Baltic states that are among the more recent entrants into NATO, Mr. Trump said if Russia attacked them, he would decide whether to come to their aid only after reviewing whether those nations have fulfilled their obligations to us. If you do not give fealty to me, the Donald, too bad for you.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you take 50 cents on the dollar for defense? Because I don't think you've been doing that good a job, I would say, if I were, I don't know, Slovenia or whoever.
Well, it's Latvia, Lithuania, who cares about them?
All the EAs.
Let them go back to being part of the Soviet Union. Let's help Putin build the Soviet Union back and make it great again.
Have you seen him on that horse? I'd love to help.
But, his hat says, make America great again. It looks like he's trying to make Putin great again.
Well, yeah.
Putin's by the way, there's a nice story about that today.
Oh, okay.
It's in the Atlantic. It's scary. It's written by Jeffrey Goldberg, foreign policy guy. It's official. Hillary Clinton is running against Vladimir Putin.
Oh.
Fulfilling what might be the Russian autocrat's dearest wish, Trump has openly questioned whether the U.S. should keep its commitments to NATO.
I'm into it.
Very, very timely piece.
Yes, I would say so, given that,
It includes the interview from yesterday. Trump has gone much further, suggesting he and Putin share a disdain for NATO, fulfilling what might be Putin's dearest wish. Trump, in this interview, openly questioned whether the U.S. under his leadership would keep its commitments to the alliance, according to Haberman and Sanger. Trump even called into question whether as president he would automatically extend the security guarantees that give the 28 members of NATO the assurance that the full force of the U.S. military has their back. Trump told the Times that should Russia attack a NATO ally, he would first assess whether those nations have fulfilled their obligations to us. If they have, he would then come to their defense. These sorts of equivocating mercenary statements, unprecedented in the history of Republican policymaking, represent an invitation to Putin to intervene more destructively in non-NATO countries such as Ukraine and Moldova, also represent an invitation to intervene directly in NATO countries, the Baltic states first and foremost. This is why the Estonian president tweeted in a cold panic immediately after Trump's interview appeared online. Estonia is one of 5 NATO allies in Europe to meet its 2% defense expenditures. The president, Tomas Hendrik Ilves, also noted that Estonia fought with no caveats with NATO in Afghanistan. Unlike Trump, leaders of such countries as Estonia believe the U.S. still represents the best hope for freedom. In his interview with Haberman and Sanger, Trump argued, in essence, there's nothing exceptional about the U.S., and therefore its leaders have no right to criticize the behavior of other countries. When the world looks at how bad the U.S. is, and we go and talk about civil liberties, I don't think we're a very good messenger.
Okay. Try.
So, like I said, running down this is the bigger story than this convention, folks. This guy is really dangerous.
Yeah, but he is. I mean, on the other hand, he's stock conservative in many ways. They've been campaigning on America sucks for a long time.
Yes, they have for years, for decades.
Yeah,
That's
and then they would
run on.
differentiate, of course. If they had the presidency, when the president's overseas, you can't criticize. Of course, that went out the window too. So, but now you can run for president, not only domestically saying we're a hellhole, but telling our allies we're terrible and we won't help you. And
when Trump loses, it's going to be very satisfying, but incredibly incomplete for the reasons you are outlining, because it won't be the end of it.
That's true. There are many, many more to take his place. It's like killing Al Qaeda number 2.
Hail Hydra.
Okay. So I think I've just compared him to Al Qaeda. That's good.
Yeah. So this is an interesting piece. It's a cartoon from Tom Tolles. It's in the Washington Post today.
Yes. And
let's see if we can actually get it to you so you can see it. It's funny. It's for your radio listeners who, even when I hold it up to the radio, can't read it. It's a picture of a jail, and in the cell is Hillary in her black and white pinstripes, and the two jailers are the actual jail master there with all the keys is an elephant. And a fellow comes up and is talking to the elephant, and the elephant says, "Economic plan? This is our economic plan." And that's about the state of Republican thinking at this point. There are several things that do unite the Republican Party. They all hate Hillary, and they like to boo Ted Cruz. So they all hate Ted Cruz too. So if you ever, imagined Hillary and Ted Cruz as allies, they are the two things that all good Republicans hate. No true Republican, puts sugar on his porridge. And no true Republican likes either one of those two figures today.
Okay.
Don't forget, obscured by the millennia plagiarism thing and the sheer incompetence of the Trump team, which has been on display for 3 days now.
Yeah.
Is the hate, the locker up, the buttons that sell things that you can't repeat on the air in a radio station that's family friendly.
Yes.
It's just been part and parcel of the entire Republican convention.
Don't leave out kill her. That's another one.
Going to the point of saying that, she should be shot. So I don't think that's a winning, upbeat message.
All right.
But we'll see how it plays out.
Well, yeah. I guess we're forced to pretend that that there's a second party and we're contesting the election.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal in terms of that. By the way, there was some interesting polling, and this comes from the Pundit Roundup. Easiest place to find it because I led the piece today with the graph, but it's from the Washington Post. Came out yesterday. Do you want the next president to?
Yes. And
ask adults these questions: support path for citizenship or oppose path to citizenship?
Yes.
Support 60, oppose 34. This one surprised me a little. Do you want the next president to support trade agreements or oppose trade agreements? You want to guess?
I blew it. I have it open.
50-50? No. It's 75 support trade agreements, 17 oppose. Smaller numbers for support legal abortion, 52, oppose 38. Support stricter gun control, 57, oppose 39. These are all issues that you might argue actually fall on the Democrat side.
Yeah.
But then you'd have to make the assumption in terms of elections that people actually vote on issues.
Well, there are some.
There are some. But, it's not
I like to answer questions. I see that.
Yeah, look at them as headwinds and tailwinds. It's not like the Democratic nominee is running into a headwind with these policy issues. In fact, on those big four questions, most people agree with the Democratic position.
Okay.
So that's at least not going to be a drag on running.
That's good.
It is good.
I'll take it.
The only drag on running is a 25-year industry trying to vilify Hillary Clinton with a tremendous amount of sexism, overt as at the Republican convention, covert because people don't like to say it, even in this Trump allows me to be politically correct. What does that mean? You don't have to be politically correct. It means you get to, voice your racism and your sexism. Right. And then finally, I guess Steve King from Iowa, is talking even more about defending white people openly.
Okay.
And that people don't speak up enough for white folks, and leftists are trying to put them down and all that sort of stuff. So the white supremacist part of the Republican platform is actually surfacing and being very dramatically articulated during these 4 days. And that's why sans the speech tonight, it's been pretty much a PR disaster.
Well, okay. We'll see if he can fix it.
Yeah. The only other thing out there on the Democratic side, that's what happens. You're supposed to focus on one party at a time. That's the whole idea of convention week. And so I totally understand the focus on the Republicans. I just don't think it's especially helping them. And the only Democratic question out there, or as Haley Barbour would say, the only Democrat question out there is who Hillary's going to pick for VP.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, after careful analysis and reading all the tea leaves and, working on the entrails and throwing the knuckle bones, I have no idea.
Yeah. The Canadians
I really don't know. The consensus is Kane, but I don't know.
Right. There was that out there. Yesterday's, I guess the panic-inducing rumor was somebody leaked to the Canadian broadcasting company, CBC, that Charlie Crist was under consideration, which I don't know whether that's really true.
That's pretty funny.
That is funny.
There aren't enough fans in America to consider Charlie Crist. It would cause an electrical crisis. The grid would go down.
I don't know what that was about, but I think, Jake McIntyre, our own Trapper John, I thought had the correct observation on that. It's not true, but beyond that, no American person would leak to the CBC for that. It doesn't make any sense. That's true. I mean,
it makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, unless they thought I thought the sign said CBS.
Right. Who spells Politico CBC?
Yeah, I don't know. Right for political operative, CBC is Congressional Black Caucus, not Canadian Broadcasting Company. It just doesn't work out that way.
The whole thing is bizarre.
That's a cable channel, as far as Americans know.
Right.
Well, maybe not if you live in, I don't know, northern tier up there. But okay, I don't. So
anyway, we had some great tweets from last night. So this is Josh Barrow. The key sign of a successful convention is when your runner-up opponent's wife has to be escorted out by security.
Yes.
Right? Rosie Gray. Cruz stuck to his prepared remarks and didn't endorse one of the most consequential moments of his political career. And I think that's right. Big gamble. Jamil Smith. Trump arrived in the stands right as Cruz was wrapping up his speech amidst loud booing. These mofos hate each other. He used the real word. Jamil, boy, what a disaster. Everyone watching this primetime just saw a speaker at Trump's convention refuse to endorse him and luxuriate in it, which is what Cruz was doing. He was taunting them. It was amazing. It's really worth watching the speech for that, because when the boos start and they're loudest from the New York contingent, Cruz just smiles in that smarmy way of his, looks over at New York and says, I appreciate the enthusiasm of the New York contingent.
Okay.
And the boos just cascade even more, and he has this big smile on his face. Yeah. And you just want him to rip off the mask and show everybody he's a lizard person. You just really want that. Jackie Kucinich, shorter Ted Cruz, I should be the nominee. Sorry, not sorry. Donna Brazil, this is a hot mess. Ted Cruz walked off the stage by telling the crowd, vote your conscience, and the crowd went stir crazy. Trump that. Can you imagine that, and some of the non-Trump people are just saying this morning, voting your conscience was booed.
Yes, of course.
At a Republican convention.
Right.
Conscience of a conservative. Joe St. George, your lead from the convention tonight, unless Pence pulls his pants down, the Cruz boos will dominate night 3 coverage.
Cruz boos. Okay.
Well, there's a...
I got to focus on that and not the Pence thing.
Booze Cruz.
Yeah, they got those, definitely.
Ted Wedding, all that stuff. Michael Tracy, master dealmaker Trump couldn't extract an explicit endorsement from Cruz in exchange for a primetime speaking slot. Right? Art of the deal stuff. Philip Klein, conservative, if the point of a convention is to unify the party and reach out to broader electorate, it's been an unmitigated disaster so far. My favorite, of course, in T-Bog. Tomorrow night, Trump will hold up Ted Cruz's still beating heart and proclaim, "Where is your God now?" Then the balloon drop and Sweet Caroline.
I like the traditions.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
One thing is Sweet Caroline.
And David Schuster pointing out, the RNC sources say Ted Cruz's speech different than version he gave RNC in advance.
Oh?
Officials and Cruz had to be physically separated after. But that's not true. RNC sources are lying. How do we know this? Because Cruz sent a copy to all the networks.
Weird.
That's the thing about incompetence. You can't even lie correctly when something like that happens. You can't claim that the speech was so different when everybody has a copy of the speech.
I guess not. Well, everybody, you can claim it.
He wasn't endorsing. Endorsement was not in the speech. It was never in the speech. The Cruz camp said they told Trump that 2 days ago.
And they just didn't read it or didn't care or
well,
I don't
that's
know
the thing, so that begs the question. Well, it's not the right use of the term. I understand that, but it does, make you ask the question, why did Trump let this happen? And I have 2 theories that are not incompatible. And theory number 1, because it is worth talking about what else happened last night, which is to say Scott Walker was on the stage doing a traditional endorsement. Marco Rubio wasn't there, sent a 90-second infomercial, which said little, trying to get the best of both worlds, and everybody looked at it and said, that's Marco, totally without substance, and trying to split, the baby and failing. And then you had a Cruz on stage, and it was as if Trump was lining up all of his trophies. I beat this guy, I beat this guy, I beat this guy. And so to Trump, it may well have been he wanted to parade everybody that he had beaten in I'm the superior alpha male night. That could have been the theme. And that may be one reason why he let Cruz speak. And the other, of course, again, not incompatible with the first theory, is nobody in the Trump camp actually read the speech.
Yeah, that's it's sounding like that's...
Because they don't. Because we already have proof of that from the first night.
Yeah, they don't read these things.
They don't read these things. Nobody checks them.
Yeah.
That would be a ridiculous thing to say for a presidential campaign at this level, except it just happened.
Many ridiculous things do. Well, too bad. So sad. I don't have anything else that rhymes, but I don't really know what to make it. I guess those guys really just don't read stuff, and maybe it comes from maybe in the business world it never mattered what they said, or they just assumed that everything that was coming out of their shop was full of effusive praise for Trump, because otherwise you would be crushed and fired. So they just think I don't know. I'm not sure who knows who's running it? No one even knows who's managing this thing.
Trump is.
I guess. But
it's all decisions go to him.
Right. So, but he's never going to read anything.
No. That's why I can totally buy the idea that nobody actually read the speech.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I wonder. I guess over in a Trump organization, I assume that there are designated readers, essentially.
Trump's got a 35-second attention span. So, if the speech were longer than like 8 words, he's not reading it.
Yeah, he could just say to people in his organization, he can say to them, "You read it, if something goes wrong, you're dead."
Read it, Ivanka, and tell me what to do.
I guess.
That's basically how
Yeah,
the
if
thing
it's really an important thing, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so this whole lock her up thing, which happened again yesterday, happened during Pence's speech too. Remember Mike Pence? He talked last night. Do you care? No, nobody does. But during his speech, they started the lock her up thing again.
Okay.
And this is an interesting piece by Brian Beutler in The Republic. The racial motivation for putting Hillary in prison.
The racial motivation. All right, sure, why not?
Here's the abbreviated roundup part of it. Clinton is blocking a return to white entitlement, and Republicans can't stand it.
Okay. It's an angle. I like it.
It's an angle.
That's true.
Yeah. Trump himself has called for Clinton to be jailed, which surely influences his supporters, but there's no reason to assume a connection between his rhetoric about her email server and the broad phenomenon of Trumpism. It's tempting to view both the racial fear-mongering and she deserves to be in stripes as separate incidental outgrowths. That would be an error, though. They're all of one piece, different expressions of a white national revanchism, just as coughing and sneezing are often symptoms of the same illness. Right?
Yeah.
And the strategy on both nights is to gin up voters with racial panic, but it's also to suggest there's a time when America was safer, America was working, a recent time perhaps when Ronald Reagan was president, that in any case predates the election of the first black president. This is the rhetorical innovation that transforms the entire convention, indeed the entire campaign, from a familiar string of racial dog whistles into a sermon of racial entitlement. As it happens, America hasn't been this safe in decades, and unemployment is near its pre-Great Recession low. By the way, jobs claims today are way down, lowest in 3 months. But it is still possible to call for mind lost times, real and imagined, when whites were more culturally dominant than they are today, when the economy worked better for more people, or at least for white people, than it does right now. You know, don't you remember when Pat Boone could sing Tutti Frutti? Don't you miss those times?
I don't.
Neither do I, but I do remember it. And crucially, when political leaders were primarily concerned with helping the winners in past racial and social hierarchies preserve their incumbency. This has been Trump's MO from the outset, to say the stolen ideal should be reclaimed forthwith.
Oh.
I mean, really, what is this whole, it was better in those days? You know, just play the original Tutti Frutti with Little Richard and Pat Boone side by side, and you scratch your head and say, we want to return to that?
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Why not?
Is that super white? Okay.
In a way, plagiarizing Michelle Obama's speech and then denying it happened, offering no apology, fits in the same paradigm. The Trumps can take what they want from those they consider beneath them in the hierarchy and feel no obligation to answer for their actions.
Right. That's the way they go.
It's ironic that a 68-year-old white woman stands in the way of a return to white racial entitlement, but to the extent that Clinton is the key obstacle, she must be taken out of contention. Clinton's unique status as the right's object of abuse and imagined scandal for nearly 30 years, her apparent determination more recently to affirm her enemies' suspicions of her, have fed the idea that imprisonment is the appropriate means of removing her. If Bernie Sanders were the Democratic nominee, he'd be legitimized as a socialist and committer of treason. If President Barack Obama weren't term limited, Trump would be whipping up the same mob with different words. No matter whom Democrats nominated, Trump and his supporters would find a pretense for claiming that the candidate wasn't entitled to hold office. What makes lock her up more unsettling than some analogous birther chant, though, is calling Clinton a crook isn't as inherently toxic or self-marginalizing as calling Obama a Muslim foreigner, and it puts Clinton in the practically impossible position of proving a negative. For the lack of cooler heads prevailing in the GOP, millions of people now see jailing Clinton as the only way to get what they feel has been taken from them. This is not normal in America. It's banana republic politics. It's elemental to Trump's candidacy, and it's not going away. So it's scary.
Yes. Well, I don't know what to say. It's just it strikes me as that much more. I guess in the gimmitarianism column, the same people who originated the weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth about criminalizing politics.
Yeah.
Can't wait to criminalize politics.
Well, this is the end of that. So this is
Trump.
a.
I'm for that. I'm just going to get on it right now.
Yeah, we're gonna.
And we might get that.
We're going to finish up with a look at another tiny little piece of the Republican National Convention, which shouldn't go overlooked.
All righty.
And this is Kevin M. Cruz, who's a historian.
He is.
On Ben Carson's RNC Cleveland speech.
Ben Carson. All right, that has been overlooked.
Yeah, the Lucifer thing.
Oh, yeah, all right.
We talked about it a little bit
All
in
right,
terms of the Alinsky connection, but he's got some more details here.
All right.
Fittingly, for the GOP convention's theme of something borrowed, there was something old and something new in it.
Yes, I did see that tweet.
Yeah, for the old, Carson rattled off a familiar list of religious symbols and slogans in our politics. As I note in One Nation Under God, which is a book he wrote, key parts here, pledge, paper money, were all innovations in the 1950s. Mm-hmm. So every time everybody always says, well, it says in God we trust, and, this is bedrock foundational stuff since the 1950s.
What, paper money? What?
It's, if you look at it, in God we trust and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. It's on the coins, though.
Right.
Okay. Well, I didn't know where paper money came into it. Okay, but I gotcha.
It must say something about it in paper money. I don't know. I don't usually go look at the dollars.
It does, I'm sure. Somewhere it says it on everything, I would think.
Well, if you take a look at a $20 bill on the back, it says United States of America, in God we trust.
Yeah. And on coins.
Right. Such forms of, quote, ceremonial deism, end quote, have been used ever since to advance arguments for religious nationalism, as Carson did. Yes. For instance, this warning sounds just like Billy Graham in 1950 or Ronald Reagan in 1980.
Yeah.
Okay. What's somewhat new is the 6 degrees of Satan argument he braided into it.
Hmm.
Okay. And there's a little piece here. What made Billy Graham so special among the conservative anti-communist voices of the 50s was the root cause that he ascribed for the evil that the country confronted. My own theory about communism, he revealed in September 1957, I was 3 years old at the time, I don't remember it, I'm just reading this, is that it is masterminded by Satan. I think there is no other explanation for the tremendous gains of communism in which they seem to outwit us at every turn unless they have supernatural power and wisdom and intelligence given to them.
We don't win anymore.
Exactly. A 1953 sermon had also reported that almost all ministers of the gospel and students of the Bible agree it is communism masterminded by Satan himself. So therefore, if they all agree, it must be true, right?
10 church ladies agree.
So Cruz goes to say, but for Carson, to link a politician like Clinton to Lucifer so directly and on such thin grounds was certainly new. Some, like Glenn Beck, made this connection before, but in a primetime convention speaker, not so much. In any case you're curious, here's the actual Alinsky dedication page in question, and puts it up there. And what he says, this is a Saul Alinsky quote, lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical. From all our legends, mythology, and history, and who is to know where mythology leaves off and history begins, or which is which, the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively, he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer.
Ah, okay.
But there are other quotes included, like Thomas Paine. Let them call me rebel and welcome, I feel no concern, but I should suffer the misery of devils, were I to make a whore of my soul.
Okay, Thomas Paine's Lucifer too.
Or Rabbi Hillel, where there are no men, be thou a man.
Lucifer.
You hear that, Ted Cruz?
Yeah. Be thou.
All right. As you can see, it's at best or worst a wink to Lucifer being the original rebel, not exactly a Satanist loyalty oath.
Uh-huh. Satanist, yeah.
Satanist, right?
You got to call 911 and pledge your allegiance to Satan for it to work.
Something like that. So again, mix of old and new, but as always, old forms of religious nationalism are invoked to make the case for evermore. So just interesting that, what's old again is new again.
Yeah, that is some pretty thin logic there.
But there was Ben Carson up on stage trying to make the connection between Clinton and Lucifer in prime time. Another one of the vanquished that Trump likes to parade at his convention.
Yes.
Because make no mistake about it, it is his convention. You can tell because of how effed up it is.
He probably should have relied, I think, on the more direct route of Saul Alinsky's, the oil painting that hung in Alinsky's house of him and Satan. That's probably better.
First Read has this little quick recap of the past 3 days. Donald Trump's campaign picked a fight with Ohio Governor John Kasich for not attending the convention on Monday. Also, a delegate rebellion broke out on the convention floor on Monday. Melania Trump's speech lifted passages from Michelle Obama's 2008 address on Monday. On Tuesday, the campaign and RNC denied there was plagiarism, but on Wednesday, the campaign acknowledged there was plagiarism. And Ted Cruz refused to endorse Trump and got booed from the stage on Wednesday. And we still have another day left.
All right. Well, there's a lot of garbage in this.
They were all preventable. They're all amateurish. The question on the table is going to be, does it really matter? And I have to say, it is fascinating watching the pundits wrestle with this. It's a question of who are you asking about? It doesn't make any difference to Trump voters, but that was never the point. It's never the point. I never go around saying, gee, I wonder what Republicans are going to think about this. The question is, what does everybody else think about this? Because the way you beat Republicans is you get non-Republicans to vote with you and actually outvote them.
Yes.
We're not trying to convince them. What a waste of time. So if you look at it and say, oh, well, it's really going to help Trump because it helps Trump with Trump support, who cares? That's not the point. And so you have these pundits saying, hey, you don't all understand. Cruz is going to be hurt by this and Trump is going to be helped. With who?
Yeah, I don't
know.
know.
Like ordinary people? I don't think so.
That's true. That's, I guess, a good third point to make there when the pundits meet and argue. It's good for Cruz. No, it's bad for Cruz. And then you say, nobody cares what happens to Cruz.
Yeah, exactly. Cruz isn't the issue. The question is, how does this unite the party and help Trump and convince people on the fence that the Republican Party and Trump are the party that you want to put your lot with, to cast your lot with? And I don't see how this convention is helping that happen. And if it isn't, then what's the point?
I don't know. Inside baseball, something has to be said. That's it.
I don't know. Anyway, my 2 cents. It makes you smack your head against the TV. What are you saying? Why are you claiming this is good for Trump? Why are you claiming the chaos is good for Trump? This is no longer the Republican primary. This is a national election, which he's going to lose.
Well, they already have all those things printed up. Good news for, and they had the good foresight.
John McCain.
Right. Not print. They stopped somewhere around 2013 or so printing John McCain on there.
But they still have a lot left.
Yeah, that's true. They still pass those out occasionally from time to time. Use them as bar napkins. But, now they can fill in the blank with Donald Trump. This is good news for Donald Trump because Donald Trump says all publicity is good publicity, including, the one about him, being mixed up in a
well, ladies and gentlemen, just because Donald Trump says something, you don't necessarily have to believe it.
And yet, look at these gold chairs.
Well, I'm just going to leave you with a headline from Roll Call, just because I'm enjoying it. It says, Ted Cruz buries the hatchet in Donald Trump's back.
And Ben Carson is a surgeon, so good.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, that's the roundup for today. We'll have to watch the speech, see what happens. Won't be around tomorrow, but I'm sure there'll be a lot to talk about after Donald Trump does whatever he does. I'm really looking forward to his I Have a Dream speech, which I hope he delivers tonight. And thanks so much for putting up with me all week and the last couple of years. I'm not going permanently, but I won't be here for a week or so, and then we'll be back and we'll see what kind of mess we're left with.
I guess so. There's a convention next week, too.
Yeah. All righty. Take care.
Very good. Thanks. Enjoy your vacation, and we'll try and get by.
Looking forward to it more than ever.
Really now. Okay, well, have a great one.
Bye.
Bye. Uh-oh. So now we're on our own for the next, 1 hour today, 2 hours tomorrow, 3 hours plus an additional 10 hours next week. Carry the 2. We'll see how we do. Okay. Segue? Anyone? All right. Here's how I'll do it. Watch this. Satan, Lucifer, Alinsky dedication page. Ready? Dedication page. Other writers. Melania, plagiarism, Meredith McIver. That's where I'll go. Yesterday, I guess after we got off the air, out came the, I don't know what to call it. Is it an admission, confession, a change in direction entirely? You'll all recall, Melania's speech is plagiarized from Michelle Obama's 2008 speech. We establish it definitively. No, it isn't. You can't believe, who are you going to believe, me, or your lying eyes? It's not plagiarized, swear to God, etc., etc. Melania wrote the whole thing, every word. That's not working. Okay, eventually, by mid-afternoon, they have come up with, and it's a day later, so it's 36 hours later. they find themselves a staffer. So here's initially what I thought happened. Then I thought something else happened, and I guess now I'm back to this. My initial thought, right off the bat, was that basically they said, all right, I don't know whether it was Trump's idea or whether it was one of the campaign people's idea. They went to him and said, why don't we just find a staffer to pin it on? That's what really, during the show yesterday, that was what I was figuring they would do. I was kind of calling for that. Why didn't you just pick a staffer? You don't even have to fire them necessarily. Or you pick a staffer who you say, oh, well, I fired him. And then you hire him back as a consultant instead of on staff, and he does all the same things. Well, it turned out not to be a he. It was a she that they chose. But that's basically what I thought they were going to do. I tweeted it yesterday. I said, get me somebody who's a writer on our staff somewhere, and we'll say that's the person who did it. And if we need to blame them, we'll blame them. If we need to fire them, we'll fire them. If it's somebody I care about, we'll just put them in a different spot and say they're an independent contractor and whatever. We'll do what we need to do. So they went ahead and they did do exactly that. They found themselves somebody who's on staff as a writer. And the person turned out to be a woman named Meredith McIver, who provided, helpfully, first a resignation letter, which we haven't seen, which, by the way, we haven't seen, I think. Let's just point that out. Maybe they've seen, I don't even care. What we did see, what was released, was a PDF of a letter in which Meredith McIver, whoever she may be, if she is someone at all, I'm still not 100% sure, but I think it's real. Anyway, a letter claiming to have submitted a resignation, although not necessarily in the form of a letter, I guess. I don't even remember anymore. But the resignation was refused by Mr. Trump and the Trump family because they love her so much, and we all learn from our mistakes and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so where were we with this? Meredith McIver was the person they got to say, I did it, and she provided, some kind of story where she's like, well, I was working with her on some early drafts, and she mentioned that she liked this other speech and read me some of the quotes over the phone, and I wrote them down, and I guess I inadvertently I inadvertently included them in the speech, and then I didn't really do the late stage reviews of the thing, and I didn't look up the full text of the Obama speech and check them against one, and that's my fault. I offered to resign, but they said they weren't going to have it, and so blah, blah, blah. So I thought this was all in keeping, and it still is all in keeping with get me somebody who's a writer. Well, okay, there's two prongs on this direction, which I'll share with you. One, Meredith McIver is someone on staff. She works, or at least claims to work. Other people claim she works for the Trump Organization, which is, of course, the corporate business umbrella that they do all their, private business in over on the Trump side, the Trump family. The letter that was released on Trump Organization letterhead. So that raises a number of issues, one of which is, why is the corporate Trump Organization providing resources to the campaign? Every once in a while they do that, and sometimes they claim it as an in-kind contribution. Other times, of course, the Trump Organization or holdings of the Trump Organization bill the Trump campaign for those services, and then the campaign converts people's contributions into payments to the Trump Organization, which Trump and some others there can pocket, including, I guess, of course, McIver, who's been, I imagine, the beneficiary of some of this money, all of this cash being fungible. Anyway, it represents, of course, a rather ridiculous campaign finance violation, but who cares, because the FEC is shorthanded and deadlocked on everything anyway, and in 5 years they'll get around to deciding that they're too deadlocked to decide to levy some minuscule fine on the Trumps, which they won't pay anyway, because who cares? They're not running for president anymore. That's the way it is with pretty much all campaigns, so no surprise there. But another example of the commingling of resources, the careless, carefree commingling of resources that goes on every single day over at the Trump Organization and the Trump campaign, not only as between the Trump campaign and the Trump Organization, but as between Trump personally and other Trump arms of the Trump Organization, the Trump Foundation, the various businesses, just anything he controls. We've gone over this. It's been a persistent theme in Trump's life and in his campaign for a long time. We acknowledge it. So then it occurred to me almost immediately after saying, well, they probably just got some writer on staff to take the rap for it. It also occurred to me, with Trump, we can't be 100% sure that this is a real person. Meredith McIver could just as well be John Barron's wife or John Miller, or depending on which pseudonym he used. And I will say Meredith McIver had an extraordinarily thin online presence for someone who was a writer and a celebrated part of the Trump Organization's operations, apparently. Had almost no presence online, which I guess if you're a ghostwriter, maybe you don't. But how do you make money as a ghostwriter unless people know that you're available as a ghostwriter? But maybe she's not available because she works exclusively for the Trump Organization and is set for life. That could explain it. Then things started popping up. LinkedIn profiles, which you would expect a professional woman of about 65 years of age to have, a Facebook page, some kind of wiki entry in a network of professional speakers. But then it turned out that all the profiles had been created that day, although ultimately I think many of them were actually created by people who were looking to use them for parody or spoofing purposes and then never either got around to it or events moved too fast. By the end of the day, I think it was pretty much established that there was a real person willing to answer to the name Meredith McIver. That's about all I'll credit them with. But the New York Times ended up coming up with a profile of her, which was somewhat interesting too, and put an interesting twist on things. I'll just summarize this way. Yesterday's report, which was also amazing. I told you she had a thin resume online. Here she is writing the first spousal speech, or the presumptive nominee's, spouse's speech. They like to call, in this thing, they call it the First Lady speech. He hasn't been elected. He won't be elected. It's not a First Lady speech. It's a First Lady pipe dream speech. Yeah, so who's writing it? Well, this professional staff writer. Now, people come into professional staff writing jobs from all directions in life. Just going to point out that the biggest news we had about Meredith McIver and her credentials was that she was a former ballet dancer and an English major. Oh, an English major? Why didn't you say so? That explains everything. So, former ballet dancer, all right, fine, whatever. I'm only going to note for the moment, before I welcome Armando to share some of the best words in the English language with us, is like everything else, there always turns out to be, with everything else with Trump certainly, and everything else with every resume ever, there turns out to be a little bit more to the story. I don't know how much there is here. I just want to note one tiny sliver of the New York Times story, which is headlined, by the way, "Behind Melania Trump's Cribbed Lines, an ex-ballerina who loved writing and was an English major."
An ex-ballerina.
Ex-ballerina. That's what I really like about that. Is she an ex-ballerina? Is she anything?
She's 65, right?
Yeah, so she's certainly not a ballerina now. Right? But here's the part I really like. Okay, they do, I guess, decide at some point, let's explore that. She is the daughter of ballroom dancers. Fine, okay.
Come on.
Ms. McIver, who did not respond to messages seeking comment, grew up in Northern California before coming to New York at age 14.
Ballroom dancers.
Okay. Well, there are such people. That's it.
Professional ballroom dancers?
I don't know.
What is it, from the Great Depression?
There are such people, certainly. I don't know. It doesn't say whether they're professional. The ardent hobbyist ballroom dancers.
Okay.
Maybe. Grew up in Northern California before. Now, here's interesting. Coming to New York at age 14 on a Ford Foundation scholarship for dance. Well, now, okay, boy, coming all the way to New York at 14 from Northern California, maybe a ballet prodigy. Well, not a prodigy. She would only be a ballroom dancer prodigy, I guess, but technically speaking. Anyway, maybe I misunderstand. Anyway, she studied at the School of American Ballet, USA, best ballet in the world, minus most of the others. She studied at the American Ballet, School of American Ballet, the official school of the New York City Ballet from 1965 through 1970. Now, that's a lot of years. So she's a former ballerina. Then she went to dance out west. Mr. Palitz, a former boyfriend of hers who remains close, it says earlier, she said she enrolled then at the University of Utah, a bit of a ballet magnet, I think everyone knows. I have no idea. She went to dance out west, and she graduated magna cum laude in 1976. I'm just say, at this point, because Trump, blah, 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 show me the program, I got to see it. But I could believe graduating from University of Utah magna cum laude. Why not? She returned to New York in 1981 and danced in the company of the revival of Can-Can, one of the most famous ballets of all time.
Come on.
At the Minskoff Theater in New York, a real theater.
Who's
I know
the
about
source for all this information?
It closed after 5 performances. Can-Can wasn't a great show. Mediocre material, no matter how it's sliced, it's still mediocre material. The New York Times wrote in its review. That, by the way, plagiarized from the New York Times. They plagiarized themselves on that. She settled on the Upper West Side, and her fashion...
Wait, but
yes?
David, how do they know she was in the show?
I don't know. Someone going to have to show me the playbill on that one.
I guess. Yeah, maybe they got an old playbill.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they don't, of course. No one does. People do collect such things, so they are available. I bet you you could have one in a day on eBay if you wanted it. So she settled on the Upper West Side. Her fashionable dress, how do we know it's fashionable? She says so. Dancer's figure and green eyes turned heads at the grocery. What grocery?
How do they know that?
I don't know. No one knows anything. Normally, I would say that's the sort of thing we forgive in a profile, but this is a Trump
organization. Somebody has to go on the record like she didn't do the interview, so who's telling these stories?
John Barron is telling these stories. She turned heads at the grocery. Not that I was there. Anyway, now here's where I thought it became... Now we have a cool story. She traveled to the Netherlands and France. Okay. That's a weird... sentence to throw in. So she settled on the Upper West Side. So she turned head to the groceries. She traveled to the Netherlands and France in How to Get Rich, which she co-wrote with Mr. Trump. She's the ghostwriter on this. She thanked Alain Bernardin, the owner of a famed Paris striptease saloon, The Crazy Horse. But eventually dancing took its toll and well, okay. Oh.
Wait, so she was a stripper? Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah,
Did I get that right?
It doesn't say that. It just says that, and here's back to my segue. I don't know conclusively that she's a stripper at the Crazy Horse or anywhere else. Maybe she just met him and liked him, and he introduced her to Donald Trump. Why would he, the owner of a strip club in Paris, know Donald Trump? I don't know. Anyway,
it's a great question.
And it doesn't say that they introduced. I'm extrapolating from all of this very thin information. But there it is. In How to Get Rich, she thanks the guy who owns the Crazy Horse. Now that's nothing, right? But just 5 minutes ago, we found out Hillary Clinton is Lucifer because she wrote a paper, maybe, about Saul Alinsky, possibly as a conservative, knocking Saul Alinsky, as they love to do, because I don't know any liberals who love to...
Wait, she also wrote something about Saul Alinsky?
I thought that was the whole point, was that that's what Ben Carson was saying, that she wrote a thesis in college about Saul Alinsky. And Saul Alinsky, in his book, in the dedication page, had a quote that referred to Lucifer, and so there you go. She wrote a paper on him. He wrote a book on the dedication page, which mentioned Lucifer, she's Lucifer. So, MacIver wrote a book with Trump, and the dedication page mentioning the crazy horse, she's a stripper. That's what I'm going to conclude. And Melania Trump's First Lady speech was written by an ex-stripper, and that's it. I mean, now the story's fun
that's very
and cool.
Carson-esque. But
I wonder how she learned. I wonder where she met Trump. By the way, the next thing, it says a little bit further on down the line that in the book, 2005 book, Trump, Think Like a Billionaire, MacIver, again as co-author, took the opportunity to acknowledge Melania Naus, then known as Melania Naus, for her kind assistance. So now the next question is, did they meet at the Crazy Horse? And what's the connection here?
Yeah, do they actually explain how she came to work for Trump? I mean,
maybe.
I mean, she was a ballet dancer and a stripper at the
allegedly a ballet dancer. Allegedly a ballet dancer.
I still, yeah. I mean, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt on that one. How did they meet? How did she meet Trump?
Maybe
did he put out an ad for a staff writer? I'm just
need a writer with ballet not required but helpful. Well, it's in here. I think. I just picked that chunk out. I mean, one of the other things in here, by the way, that's actually maybe a little bit more substantive in terms of the story is. I'll start right here. Mr. Palitz, the former boyfriend. A lawyer who has remained friends with Ms. MacIver for decades said that...
he's the source. Okay.
Yeah. Knowing her generally meticulous attention to detail, it sounds like she sort of stepped up and fell on her sword, which was my initial thought about all this. It was not the first time Ms. MacIver was faulted for lines she wrote for the Trumps. In other words, this is something she's done for them before. She's got a standard fee for this now. In a 2007 deposition, Mr. Trump was grilled over whether he had overstated his debt by billions of dollars in a couple of his co-written books to make his comeback seem more significant. In other words, was it that, what kind of embellishment? I forget what the terminology that he put on it, but then it turns out he didn't write that either.
That's from the deposition transcript that O'Brien has been circulating.
Yes, okay. So he's grilled about it, and he acknowledged the exaggeration, but the mistake, he said, was not his. This is somebody that wrote it, probably Meredith MacIver, Mr. Trump said. So in the deposition, on the spot, sweating it out and, under the lights, he said, okay, it was bull, but some broad did it. Meredith MacIver. You take her. And so she takes the fall for it. And there's no fall, of course. She just remains employed. So basically, I think they said, you got to have a writer somewhere who doesn't care, right? Who you're not going to fire and it doesn't care what you do to her as long as you continue the payments. Sure, Meredith MacIver. She did it when I was on trial for fraud last time. Okay. We'll use her on this one.
Yeah, just to be clear, that was the one where Trump sued the writer for defamation because he said he wasn't worth what he claimed to be worth. And then Trump basically admitted in the deposition that he wasn't worth what he claimed to be worth, but blamed Meredith MacIver for it.
For writing the book that said, I.
I'm still intrigued how they got to know each other.
I wonder. I'll skim while you give me some of the better words you might have collected from the English language.
You're actually just as a segue from what you're talking about, because I think it's kind of interesting. Trump sent, and it's of all the stories, there's 72 crazy Trumpalooza stories. Mm-hmm. Cruz being, of course, the first one. But one of the ones that's interesting is the guy who wrote the Art of the Deal, the other ghostwriter. Received a cease and desist letter from Trump's lawyers saying, you better stop talking bad about me or I will sue you, and I want all the royalties back from the Art of the Deal.
Oh, yeah. Sure, why not? Here, I'll give them to you. Hang on. Why do you want them back? I thought you gave them all to charity.
That's a great point.
What's the difference? Well, I'll give them to charity instead. You didn't actually do that, though, did you? Because we don't know, because you won't show us your taxes. Thank you.
Right, and there's that. I think another story that people won't pay attention to yet, although I suspect we'll hear about it next week. Pam Bondi was the most outrageous speaker last night. I know people think Ted Cruz, but Pam Bondi.
Well,
Pam Bondi, who is probably one of the most corrupt figures in the United States, and who was bribed by Donald Trump to not investigate Trump University, to drop that lawsuit.
Yeah, and if I can remind listeners, bribed with $1 on a fishing line that he yanked back.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And she only got $25K for it, while Greg Abbott took $35. So another one of those underpaying the ladies issues.
Right, there's that. But the chutzpah, though, lock her up. I mean, you're a criminal yourself. By the way, in theory, she's a top law enforcement officer in Florida.
What's the point?
But everybody in Florida knows she's a crook, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, does she carry a gun? That may take care of things.
She does carry a gun. She has been married 3 times.
All right, as many people in Florida have. Is the gun dirty? Just wondering.
Not that we don't know about that, but we do know she's a crook, and we do know she was bribed by Donald Trump not to investigate Trump University.
Yes, Trump a genius in my book, and that one making the donation from the Trump Foundation, knowing probably full well that was an illegal donation, that Bondi was too dumb to realize it. She tries depositing the check. She did deposit the check. She drops the investigation, announces it publicly. Then, oops, it's from a foundation. You have to return it because it's an illegal contribution. So she does, I guess, in fact, return the money. And then what is she going to do? Go back and say, you know what? I realize
now I'm reopening.
Yeah. So the case was dropped for $0
But think about that.
Oh, but that gets her off the hook. Now it's not a quid pro quo because there's no
I know,
quid.
but think of what that tells you about Trump and how he did it. We all know about how he bought Tim Tebow's helmet and some trip to the wine country in France from his foundation money.
France.
Yeah, I don't know if he went. I think he ended up not going, but he paid like $20,000 of his foundation money.
Yeah.
To go
I didn't know about that one, but sounds par for the course.
Right. And Trump, I mean, just blithely ordered somebody write a check out of the foundation. You know he did.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of this thing. Write that Dirty Paul $25,000 check from the foundation.
Yeah.
And again, I'll segue again. Eric Trump spoke last night, and I thought he was pretty poor in his delivery. But I'm always interested when he started talking about his foundation. Why does Eric Trump have a foundation, and what does it do?
Same thing. You got to establish a household for Eric at some point. Can't live in there's no basement in the penthouse, but you can't live in the penthouse forever. Even though
so he draws a salary from the foundation.
Yeah, I'm sure he draws a salary from the organization. He probably, and then they said, Donald said, it's a great trick, essentially, is you build a name for yourself in business. You're going to have to go out there at some point. I'm going to die eventually. You got to have your own business. Start now. And one of the things you can do, one of the best lifestyle / business moves you can do, if you like the smarmy, cocktail circuit lifestyle that I've gotten you used to, here's what you do. You start a charitable foundation and you buy all your tickets. If you have to buy them, if you can't talk your way into being comped because you're super famous to the cocktail reception you want to go to, you buy it out of the foundation. And it's lifestyle support, and it's all tax deductible. So the flight to the thing, the tickets to the thing, and if you are staying away from home, one of our thousands of penthouses, and you need a hotel, and it's not one of our hotels, charge it to the foundation, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all tax deductible. That's how I do my lifestyle. Here's one for you, here's one for you, here's one for you. Everybody gets a foundation. You get a foundation, you get a foundation.
But they all named him. Why didn't they just all work for the Donald J. Trump Foundation, though? Why does Eric need his own foundation?
I don't know. I'm not sure whose idea necessarily it was. It might have been Donald's idea.
Also, does Donald Jr. have a foundation, too?
I don't know. I would guess so. If not, then Eric is the smarter of the two, I think, for having set it up. And I guess, honestly, if you are Eric or Donald Jr., if you watched, for instance, what happened as between Donald Sr. and Fred Jr. when Fred Sr. died, you got to have yourself set up with and your money in pocket and in places
that's a good point.
where you can't, the other family members can't stab at you in the back and grab it.
So Donnie Jr. might be like the one who cuts Eric out, so he needed to have his own foundation.
Yes, I would guess. I mean, that's a killer family. So, honestly, I would say history tells you so long as Melania remains married to him, the one you watch out for is Barron. Barron's the one who wants to kill everybody and inherit it all.
Sort of the Nero of the family, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
or the
Nero
Richard killed his
III
mother, so Melania better watch out.
Oh, yeah. Well, we could go with Richard III on that one instead. His idea, you kill everybody.
Do you think
in line
Melania's the last one, or do you think he'll get another one after this?
Depends how long he can, perform.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's stuff for that though. So
right. I guess it could go on for what's he like 70 something?
He's 70
now. Well, yeah, he could go into the 90s.
One of the speakers last night was an 81-year-old casino owner. Ruffin is his last name, and he's married to this 30-year-old Ukrainian beauty pageant winner.
Why doesn't make American women great again? What is going on?
I know. I mean, that's why I thought, is Melania really the last one? Here's this Ruffin guy who's 81, and he just got a new model.
Marla Maples was the only made in the USA one he got.
I know. She was apple pie and Georgia peach. And he got
Tiffany turns out to be the best Trump. So
I don't know. Listen, we're making fun of Trump, but I assume you guys talked about this NATO thing this morning. Right?
We've mentioned it. I mean, I don't even know how to address it. Everything's out the
insane.
window. Goodbye.
But it's the 900th insane thing he said, though.
Yes.
That's sort of. I guess I got a little inured to it, but what made this most interesting is the question presented was very specific. It wasn't just a general, well, should we help our allies thing. The question was, if Putin invades the Baltic states, will you support and help? And he said, I don't know. I got to think about it.
Maybe.
I got to see if they're paid their dues to the Trump Country Club. See if they have a Mar-a-Lago condominium. Make sure that they're paying my boy Eric Trump his foundation money.
That's a good way of making the decision. If the president of the country owns a condo or is willing to sign a contract to buy one, yes, I'll defend you. Just so I know you're a quality person. I'm not going to stick my neck out for everybody.
If you think about it, he's talked about, and head of the Trump transition, Chris Christie, it said that the idea is to have people who don't have to quit their private sector jobs come run things in the government.
Yes, that's the idea. That's of course the reform of the big reform where we were saying, I mean it's clearly
illegal at this point for most of the jobs.
But they would like to fix that, just as it's illegal to just purge the federal government of civil service employees.
That's also Christie's idea.
We'll just change that. Yeah.
I mean, it is very Erdoganish. It's very Putinish. Gary Kasparov, who's a conservative, obviously was the former world chess champion from Russia, but very conservative, very aligned with Republicans, wrote a piece in the New York Daily News today ringing the alarm bells about how Trump and his campaign are basically agents of Putin.
Yeah.
And he called out names, and he's, listen, it's conspiracy theory stuff, but there's actually evidence. General Flynn gets paid by Russia Today, which is owned by Putin.
Whoops.
And by the Russian government. What's his name? Manafort, of course, worked for a bunch of Putin puppets in Ukraine particularly. And, of course, Trump has been very, very complimentary towards Putin. And Putin, of course, has been very complimentary towards Trump. So there's clearly a lot. And then when you couple that with this specific reference to not defending a NATO country who is attacked by Russia. Now, let's remember why NATO exists. It's to tell Russia that if you attack anybody in Europe, we will attack you. We will defend them.
Yeah.
That's its purpose. Its main purpose.
I don't know necessarily whether that's... I don't know. I mean,
there was an argument, hey, look at all the peace, Gorbachev. Do we really need NATO? Because, Russia's not a problem anymore. But when presented with the hypothetical where Russia is a problem, and they do invade Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, what are we going to do? Trump says, I don't know. Let me check the list of who owns condos at the Mar-a-Lago or who gave money to Eric's foundation. He didn't put it in those terms. I'm a judge. He said, well, if they paid up their obligations.
Right.
Meaning what?
Meaning they're better than I am because I
don't
mired in debt and I constantly am bartering with people and
I mean it's sort of a bankruptcy of the NATO obligation the United States has. I'm going to negotiate this now. I'm taking the NATO treaty, the Atlantic Charter, to bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And we'll see what obligations I assume and which ones I reject.
I'll give you 30 of the 100 warheads I said.
Yeah.
And maybe not even that. Yeah, well, that's his normal business operations. But again, the problem's not just Trump, remember. But in sum total, the party that's asking for your votes is the one that says, let's default on the debt, let's default on the NATO treaty, let's not defend Western Europe against Russia, let's not pay our bills.
Well, the forgotten man, Ted Pence. Look at me. I'm even turning him into Ted Pence. See how Ted Cruz has dominated the news cycle?
Mm-hmm.
I forgot Pence's first name. Mike Pence.
What's the difference?
Talked about our allies
not
trusting us because the Obama administration is so...
Let me fix that.
Inconstant with its alliances. I mean... You can't write these scripts, and then the New York Times has this story where Trump literally says we will not honor our treaty obligations.
Yeah, that's not normally. It's not even a normal question. Normally, you ask that question, and I mean the candidate is very gracious about. Oh, that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking. And then you say, well, because it's a great question because the answer is obvious. We're allies. We do what we got to do. I hope it never comes to that. Well, would nuclear weapons be? Listen, I don't want to preclude any options, but be premature.
Yeah, there's a standard nonsense that you hear in these things.
Right, but no, we probably wouldn't do it.
That's what he did.
Oh, that's what
on the record, to the paper of record.
And interesting. I mean, I guess the theory behind it, if there is one, is supposed to be he believes that America has shouldered too much of the burden financially for the common defense of Western Europe and other allies around the world, and he thinks those countries should put more money into it. And so basically that's it. Yeah, he will check with you whether you're a member in good standing on dues before deciding whether or not he will meet the treaty obligations, which is an approach to things. But I mean, my question is, well, how did they ask him specifically about the Baltic states?
Yes, they gave him a hypothetical.
How are they doing?
Russia invades Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia.
Right. Okay.
What do we do? Do we honor our NATO obligations? And Trump said, well, I'll have to see if they're
up to date. And so, but the answer is, I don't know if they're up to date because I don't care how individual little teeny-weeny countries that are crap are doing. But here's my policy, but I don't really know what the implication of the policy is because what do I know? I don't know whether they're up to date. What if they are? Or what if one of them is and the other one isn't, but in order to get to the one that is, they had to overrun the one that isn't? Well, we'll liberate this pocket because they're current. I don't know. Now,
Listen, I mean, we've normalized Trump, and we do it too to some extent. I blame myself sometimes. There is no precedent for such an ignorant, uninformed, stupid buffoon being a major candidate for president. I tell you this knowing that George W. Bush was president.
he made it all the way to the presidency.
George W. Bush is a genius compared to Trump. He is an encyclopedia of knowledge compared to Trump.
Yeah. Basically.
He is a mentally sound, no father issues guy compared to Trump. Trump is a psychopath. He's dumb. He's ignorant. He's a narcissist. He's a danger to the world. And we're supposed to pretend this is normal. It's not. It's not. And I take this back to the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing. Ruth Bader Ginsburg did that for a reason. Mm-hmm. She is appalled and shocked that this kind of person might become president. She wasn't. Listen, she wrote her dissent in Bush v. Gore, but she didn't go crazy and say this is crazy or whatever. And in this re-election, nothing. Obama, McCain, nothing. Romney. Mm-hmm. Trump is, it's unlike anything we've seen in our country. And I don't even, I was 1 or 2 years old, Barry Goldwater, period. Mm-hmm. And who knew? But, I saw Barry Goldwater later in life. He knew some things. He wasn't completely narcissistically insane. Trump is. And Trump knows nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty obvious. I wonder how the Baltic states are doing relative to others. I actually have a chart I know about how many military personnel they commit to NATO, but I don't know, this relative size of the countries. How can I tell whether that's sufficient?
He doesn't know the countries in NATO.
That's probably true.
I don't think he could name the 3 Baltic countries. And he should be able to, because that's where he gets his wives from, that part of the world.
Yes, and I'm Balkan, yeah, and I'm confusing myself. The Baltic and
Balkan and Baltics,
different.
But Slovenia is more Balkan. You're right.
They and
Ivana was Czechoslovakian, so yeah, I'm wrong in the sense it wasn't really Baltic. It's more Balkan or Slovak.
But Slovenia is in. I wonder what she thinks about that. That's a good question. Ask Melania what she thinks about abandoning Slovenia to the Russians.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question.
7,300 troops in NATO, Slovenians, which, by the way, puts them significantly below in terms of total commitment, including reserve personnel. Estonia, 63,209. Let's see. Lithuania, 20,389. And who am I missing from the Baltics? What did I say already? Estonia,
well, the Estonian president tweeted out that they are up to date with all their treaty commitments in terms of expenditure payments, etc.
Right, but we're foreclosing on them anyway. Doesn't matter. 17,000 Latvian troops, all told. So that's a pretty hefty contribution right there. Let's see. Estonia, 63,000, 73,80. It's 100,000 Baltic troops active in reserve. They're doing fine, I would say.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Slovenia, guys are lame. 8,800? Give them back.
Give it back.
That's what I'm saying.
That's funny.
Okay, but fine. What he had complaints about Turkey as well, yes?
Well, I didn't read that part of the New York Times article, so maybe he did or maybe he didn't. I remember his incoherent statement about it the first night he came out to speak about, we hope that we have good friends there. He clearly didn't know anything about Turkey.
Okay.
I'm sure that
about Turkey.
When he heard Erdogan, he was thinking of the guy who used to run Atlantic Records. There's no way he knew that guy's name.
There are 2 countries in NATO with more than 1 million troops, active and reserve combined, committed to NATO. One is the United States.
Yes.
The other is Turkey. Just want to put
Wow.
There's
How
not
about that?
another one.
You see, I did not know
Close.
that, and that's a really interesting fact.
That is an interesting fact. There's not another. There's. I guess if we drop the bar, here's interesting. Drop the bar to 500,000. Only 3 countries have committed more than 500,000 troops combined to NATO. United States, 2.2 million. Turkey, 1 million. And, or I guess this is all active personnel, I suppose, is what this must be. And then the third is, don't forget about them, Poland, with 635,000 troops at the ready, should NATO call.
George W. Bush knew that Poland had 65,000 troops.
635.
635,000 troops.
Well, he knew that they had something, and he didn't want them forgotten. Iceland,
Right.
380.
Donald Trump doesn't know that, though.
No, but that's interesting, though. That's it. That's all there are over 500,000. So interesting that if that's the bar, like, we're not going to defend you unless you put up, a certain number of troops. And if you ask them, well, who do you think is doing a good job meeting their obligations? I'd be curious to know what he thought.
He'll say Russia's doing a good job with their NATO
Russia's doing a good
obligations.
job fulfilling their obligations to NATO. I mean, I think most people, if they had to guess, they would say, I don't know, England and France and Germany certainly
That's what I would have said.
doing great. England, now it's down to England, but the United Kingdom, so long as it remains united, 387,571. France,
I think Scotland could stay in it but just as Scotland, I would say.
Sure, they certainly can if they wish. I'll keep them. France, 322,215. Everybody's in the 300s. Germany, 325,000. Greece actually has more than they do and on call. All right. Bulgaria has more than that.
Bulgaria's in NATO. So I didn't know that had happened.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and
I knew there was a big fight about Ukraine getting in there.
Yes.
And that's what sparked the whole mess in the first place.
Albania, Bulgaria, Croatia, Czech Republic, Estonia, this is for former Soviet bloc, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia. I guess that's it for the former Soviet client states.
Right. Unbelievable. I do have some good words here that aren't mine. I won't plagiarize them because I'm going to credit them. And believe it or not, Jonah Goldberg. I like these 2 paragraphs from his review of Ted Cruz last night. I don't know if Greg shared it with you, but I think it's worth sharing. Just these 2 paragraphs, if I may.
Yes.
He says, Ted Cruz has never been my favorite politician, and I'm not so naive that I don't recognize the gamble Cruz is making. But if the choice is between forgiving Ted Cruz's obvious political calculation to become the standard bearer of an authentic conservatism, or Donald Trump's lizard-brain narcissism where no principle or cause outranks his own glandular desire to be worshipped, like a conqueror atop the carcass of conservatism, I choose Ted. Those are good words. Good words from Jonah Goldberg. Now, this next paragraph is also pretty good. Takes a shot at Mike Pence. Here's Jonah. If the choice is between, say, congratulating the Boy Scoutish obedience of Mike Pence as he sells off bits and pieces of his soul, like jewels from a family heirloom, just to survive another day, or Ted Cruz, who took the tougher road and refused to join the mewling mobs of toadies, apologists, human weather vanes, difference splitters, and vacillators, I choose Ted.
All right. They're eloquently, probably plagiarizing, but eloquently expressing.
Well, if he plagiarized from a good one.
Yeah, good job.
So he did well. So I found that refreshing in a sense. Look, I mean, Ted Cruz he's a bad man. Let's be honest.
Yes.
No
doubt.
But I give him credit. His insanity, maybe it's his own insanity that drove him to to do what I think, even from his perspective, is the right thing, because Donald Trump isn't going to be a conservative. He's not going to be a liberal. He's not going to be anything. He's going to be a racist.
But yes, you can't say he's a conservative after he throws NATO out.
He's not a conservative. I mean, he's a racist. He's a sexist. He's a blight on humanity. He's an ignoramus and a threat to the world. But he's not a conservative. I mean, Ted Cruz is all those things probably, but also a conservative. So if you're a conservative, it's hard for me to see how they can justify being for Trump. They're not getting their party back if he wins. That's for sure, right?
They would. I imagine it would be a very difficult thing to do. I assume then everything that comes after is an emulation of Trump. And I don't know whether he becomes the new Reagan or not, but just everybody invoking his name and saying, I'm a Trump Republican would be the thing to do, I assume. Unless, I guess everything else about his rise has been so unprecedented, I suppose it's entirely possible that he forever after hung in effigy by true Republicans, and you can't win the Republican nomination without saying we should be imprisoning him. I don't know, but I doubt it. The normal play is that guy won. I'm going to do what he did.
Yeah, I know. I get that, and that's the normal play. That's the normal politics of it. I totally see that. I think should be a recognition, though, not just for those of us who are Democrats, that Trump is different. Trump is unqualified and unfit to hold any office, much less the office of president. But for Republicans and conservatives, there's more. He's not really a Republican. He's not really a conservative. He's just a buffoon.
Yeah.
My objection isn't, listen, I think it's possible and probable that he would pick bad Supreme Court justices, but
very likely, yes.
Possible he won't. I don't think that's the argument that I'd make a bit against Trump. The argument I make against Trump is he's a menace to the world, not because of his ideology, but because of his character and his personality and his mental instability.
Yeah.
I could survive if there was no Supreme Court vacancies. You could survive if you're a conservative 4 years of Hillary Clinton and go beat her, right?
Yes.
Can you survive 4 years of Trump? I just don't see it. I mean, I think there's a really reasonable argument for conservatives and Republican Party to say, I can't survive Trump. I mean, I can survive Hillary, but I can't survive Trump. I think that's a reasonable position, even for Ted Cruz.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I don't want to ever say I give him credit, but I understand what he's doing. It might work, it might not. I don't really care one way or the other. So long
4
as it's
years is a long time.
problems,
If Trump gets beat and gets beat bad, how many people are going to be rallying around Donald Trump?
I don't know, and not that many. And are any of those guys going to make it all the way back to the Republican convention without having changed their minds about what they just watched?
I mean, I guess there's an argument from Crew. He could have played the Kasich card and not shown up.
Mm-hmm.
But, he's an egotist, too.
Yes.
And he wanted to do this, let's be honest.
Oh.
He went out of his way to do it. And Trump let him do it. I'm still trying to figure out what was it, how the Trump people thought this was a good idea for them. And I know Morning Joe spins this as good for Trump because they're nuts as well. But it's been a bad week. I mean, I don't know if Greg touched on this, but I've been looking at two polls. Well, one that came out, the new Rasmussen poll, and Rasmussen, always this crazy pro-Republican lean, and it had Trump +7 before the convention started, and they just released a poll and said Trump +1. So according to Rasmussen, Trump has had a negative 6-point bounce in this convention.
I realize that, okay.
Now, more reliable but still problematic poll is this online tracking poll that the LA Times is running. and according to them, Trump started ahead by 3 points or 2 points when the convention started, and now he's down a point. So according to them, he's had a negative 3-point bounce with this convention.
Not bad.
So I mean, that's just not the way conventions go. You may not get much of a bounce, but you still get some bounce. He's going the wrong way. Why?
Yeah,
because the convention's been a disaster. There's no way this is a good idea, and it's only you got to be Halperinishly hackish to really see it that way.
Well,
Halperinishly hackish. I was trying to turn a phrase there, but I blew it. But in essence, it's impossible to spin this as a good thing for Trump.
No. Well, I mean, to be believed, anyway.
Right.
Trump will do it, nonetheless. And as I warned the other day, I mean, at this stage, you got to watch out if you've given any thought to walking up and down Fifth Avenue at any point. He may deliver on his promise, just to test whether or not he can get away with it.
But he's at 40. I mean, that's the thing is his unfavorables are 60. He's at 40.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how does any of this work? Look, I don't want to be overconfident. We got to go work our butts off. But, I just think we're in a good position. I mean, I spend a lot of time in Florida, and I follow Florida politics and the demographics of it and voter registration very closely. And I'm not seeing how we lose Florida right now because of the growth of the Latino vote, particularly the non-Cuban Latino vote, the continued diminution of white voters, the fact that I expect that Clinton will do better with white voters in Florida, particularly than Obama did, but do at least as well with people of color. So I think she's got a good field to play. She's got the most money. She's got the best lineup for surrogates. I wish she'd do better on vice president than I suspect she will do. But, it's there to be had. The election is ours to win if we do what we're supposed to do.
Well, I
know you always got to be afraid.
Yeah. It's all you can do. I mean, I hate the prediction business. So
it's very hard, especially about the future, right?
Yeah. Well, every kind of prediction I've ever made has been about the future, I think. Unless I'm guessing about what I'll find in my study of historical records, but even that is future tense. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm out of energy in terms of being constantly agog at this convention, but we have one more night to deal with.
And we'll be the most agog. Though it's interesting. What choice do you think Trump makes? Does he give a conventional speech? Does he do 20 minutes ripping Cruz? Does he talk about his polls, his big hands?
I don't know.
I mean, what does he do? Does he do like he did with Pence, which was insane?
I don't have any idea. I assume he's
doing the polished speech myself.
Yes, that he's being prevailed upon. Just look, you're in a different arena. You'll get used to it. You'll get your feet under you politically. For now, read this. They got him to read teleprompter speeches earlier. So, and they weren't good, but, I mean, the press treated them as disciplined, pivoted Trump. So if that's the headline he wants, I guess he's probably not that hard to convince. Read this.
Look, there's going to be, and actually I think the entire media is going to be very primed to talk about how great Trump was tonight.
They want to.
No, they really want to, and unless it's just completely undeniable, they will. But I don't know that matters so much. I mean, I'm sure they wanted to say that he did great in the Pence rollout, but they couldn't. It was impossible. Now, I heard this morning that they're talking about a 45-minute address from Trump. I don't know that he's capable of keeping it sane for 45 straight minutes.
That's a lot of writing.
Yeah.
Maybe they're counting on 25 plus minutes of applause.
Yeah, I mean, that would help. I wonder if he'll go lock her up or whether he will go, I will unify the party. I'm a great unifier. But he's so frantic anyway, even when he's just reading from the teleprompter. I just don't think this is a good venue for him. But
it occurred to me now. I'll add to the pile of conspiracy theories this one: the idea that handlers somewhere along the line said, "Don't run yourself ragged trying to tamp down on small scale garbage fires that break out. And in fact, you might want to light a few for the first 3 nights, so that by comparison, a simple reading of a teleprompter-fed speech is received as a triumph by the media. Because otherwise it's just flat, and although they may say, well, the goal for Trump is not to make any major gaffes, and if he did, it's a triumph. Now we can really seal it if everything else is a seething, grease fire. This one, just hitting the marks will be received as practically a coronation.
Yeah, I know, but in essence, even when he tries, you remember the first pivot when he did supposedly the foreign policy speech and he read it straight from the teleprompter and it was a complete bore?
Yes. And it will be. I mean, it would be a complete bore now, and that's probably the fight that's going on. I need something spectacular, and I
mean, he's not polished as a conventional speech giver.
Right.
It's not. Look, I thought Mike Pence was boring, but his speech was professionally delivered, and the media could do its little act. But of course, nobody cared because of Cruz. But Trump can't do that polished delivery, or at least not make it interesting. I mean, it's a conundrum. I think on some level you got to let Trump be Trump. I mean, if you're running him, if he's your candidate, I think you just got to let him do what he does.
Well, now we got to figure out who's in control there and who holds sway when it comes to advising him and who is he listening to. A middle path, by the way, for having a little bit of the excitement but still keeping him on track is, well, we want to let you know we're going to seed the crowd with, lock her up kind of stuff, and maybe we may even have somebody near enough to a microphone to be picked up by the television crowd, do the hang the bitch thing, and I want you to put your hands up in the whoa 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 now kind of gesture, be magnanimous, look like you're trying to keep things civil. That'll be the pivot stuff. We'll take care. We'll make sure that the television broadcasts lock her up, hang the bitch. Just, it's not you saying it and you're the one saying, now, come on now, everybody, let's be civil. And that's probably the best outcome they can get. The question is, who's advising that? And is he listening? Because more and more, by the way, and you'll like this angle of it, I'm hearing more and more stories, or more and more of them are being published, that Corey Lewandowski is still in. That he's still, one, being paid by the Trump campaign, and everybody sort of dismissed that initially as severance, but two, that he's still advising them, which is amazing because he's a paid CNN contributor. But I'm hearing back and forth. I guess there's pushback from the other camps struggling for control that apparently he tried to get himself seated in the Trump family box for the speeches the other night, but he was rebuffed from that. One would hope that it was a CNN vice president, it wasn't the Trumps turning him away, but a CNN vice president trying to drag him out of there by his coat. Like, what the hell are you doing? We look like idiots hiring you, and you're in the middle of doing this. But apparently he has also been working the floor at the convention, pitching donors for his own pro-Trump super PAC, which, again, you would think is maybe something CNN doesn't want happening while he's a paid contributor. But he's all over the place. Politico has a piece on Corey Lewandowski, mischief maker, BuzzFeed about the super PAC thing.
The super PAC thing is just incredible.
Covering themselves in glory at CNN.
I tell you, CNN is just... Fox is Fox. They do what they do. What is CNN doing? I don't even get it.
I don't know. There's no reason to have them.
Oh, by the way, Ailes.
Yes.
Ailes. Apparently, I see a story. The Gretchen Carlson's attorneys say they have 20 women lined up to testify.
Yeah.
That Ailes sexually harassed them.
Right. And now Megyn Kelly.
Including Megyn Kelly, one would assume.
Yeah, I don't know whether she's lined up to testify or not, but hey, that's great. That's 20 women and at $2 million worth of golden parachute apiece. I understand he is negotiating. He's fighting for
he wants
a
more
larger one.
For the non-compete.
Right.
He says, I'll give you,
Sure.
something about the non-compete, and he'll give them, he
interesting.
wants more.
I'd be like, you know what? How about I give you less and you do compete? Please, let me see
I
who
agree.
hires you.
I think Fox might be helped by having some crazy Blaze-like network to its right.
Maybe, yeah. That would be
And
helpful.
Megyn Kelly might like that because, she's really craving, it seems to me, and she's got good PR on it. She's craving, mainstream adulation.
Mm-hmm.
And fighting with Trump has helped her a lot on that.
Yes.
And, Fox could position itself as being a little more mainstream. The reality is, long term, 20 years from now, Fox can't be Fox because their audience is going to die.
Yes,
right?
Presumably.
I mean, and the kids, Rupert will be gone. They have enough money. So what they want is their own legacy. I bet they wouldn't be averse to repositioning themselves a little more center-right.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm sure they enjoyed controlling politics, and that's hard to do from, by moderating. But on the other hand, it's hard to remain at the top of the heap if the metric is craziness within the conservative sphere. It's always going to be easier to just flank from the right. I don't know. I don't know how
they say
this.
that, what's his name, O'Reilly and Hannity, all these people can leave if Ailes leaves. They have some kind of clause in their contract or something.
Yes, that's a good By the way, that's a fantastic contract to have. I reserve the right to go where the serial molester goes.
Right, I think there's two aspects of it. I think these guys should realize that even in the short term, Fox is bigger than them. I mean, first of all, you got to get cable clearance, and you got to do all sorts of things to start a network, and you got to have some interstitials. Fox is Fox in a lot of different ways. They have the movie business, they have the actual TV network, they have the sports.
Yes,
I mean, it's not that easy to just go and start a network.
No, people who, internet cheerleaders thought it might be possible, but Glenn Beck tried it. You see he's still alive, he's still making money, that's fine, but he's not in any way competitive.
Yeah, he's not important. Nobody pays attention to him. I mean, sure, a little bit, but not much.
No, it's difficult. You can break in and have a presence, but you can't do anything like what they did. So no, they can that'd be great. That'd be fantastic for them all to exercise that option and be done with it.
I don't think, they'll go renegotiate their contracts and probably get raises.
Yeah.
But,
it's the only
they're not
going
to get anything.
Why would they want to be associated? We're following the old hamburger dick, as I'm calling him now.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, you got 4 minutes. Let me let you wrap up your show.
Yeah,
thanks for letting me talk a little bit.
Certainly. We're without Greg for tomorrow and next week. So if you feel like stopping by,
if Trump is worth discussing tomorrow, I'm more than happy to talk about it.
He's always worth discussing. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how you're motivated.
Well, he's got a big speech tonight. I mean, it's a big moment, no question about
it. Yeah. All right. We'll watch. Thanks very much, Armando.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you. You do the same. All right. So we're wrapping things up. We're almost at the point where we tell you what happens next on the air here at Netroots Radio. Let's see. Is there anything else I wanted to pitch? Maybe to serve up for consideration for tomorrow? Let's see. There were definitely a few things out there, but I think we hit the highlights of those things. I know what we can do tomorrow. Don't really need to tease them per se. I think we hit just about everything that I meant to. Oh, except one more thing, and I'll see if I can't work that one in. Way back now to that New York Times article I was borrowing so much from. It doesn't actually say anywhere in there explicitly how they met. So big question mark. Would love to see some more work done on that one. But the one point I wanted to extract from this is now that we know or are willing to assume that, okay, maybe she's a real person after all, and it's not a John Barron situation so much. My next question is, okay, she's taken the fall for him before, so this is the kind of person who's willing to step up and say, yeah, I did it, even if she didn't do it. So to that question, to the fraud type question, if it doesn't rise to the level of fraud or just fibbing or whatever, if she's been on staff and writing there for a long time and been a trusted source, how much work, if any, did she do on the Trump University materials, which were, in fact, of course, the root of his fraud there? And one part of the answer is that the guy who did all the ghost writing in the Trump voice for the Trump University materials and the blog and the books and all sorts of things, he refers to MacIver as a long-term go-to person inside the organization. The guy behind the words behind the Trump University fraud said she's the go-to one. Interesting, just worth a little bit more investigation, I think. Well, what's going to be investigated on the after show? I can share you with you now. It's Thursday. That means it's Thank God It's Joe Vidi on the show. Here's what's up. An assault rifle packing Miami police officer shoots an unarmed behavioral therapist lying on his back, hands in the air, in the middle of the street and pleading for his life, while his autistic patient fidgeted nearby. I've seen the video. It's making the rounds. You won't believe it.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
A little bit more here. A vigilante wannabe Atlanta store clerk is arrested after holding an innocent 11-year-old black boy at gunpoint. And the ultra-conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals strikes down Texas's highly restrictive voter ID law. How about that? And that and much more coming up on the After Show with Wink and Justice.